What is going on with Bed Bath & Beyond? What has happened the last several years that's sort of caused it to fall apart, if we can be fair about that?
Well, I don't know if we want to say that it's fallen apart yet with $7 billion in sales, plus or minus, and 1,000 stores, but it is definitely having a really difficult time. I think what's interesting about Bed Bath & Beyond is it's reflective of a retailer that stood still while the industry was changing around them. And recently, they had some outside investors come in, create an activist campaign, and you've got to give those investors credit for courage. But they came in and recognized a few of the signals that some of us observers had seen for a long time, which was a reluctance to really try to think about changing the business model in a way that might attract the new consumer. And so what we've seen is a continued decline. I think it's 9 quarters in a row now of negative same-store sales. That's really the key number that you want to look for with retail businesses. And so this is a business that has just continued to hemorrhage sales, generally to Amazon, but to other competitors as well, in a category that ought to be a relatively stable category, and also one that is a category that people do like to shop in a physical store environment. And so you look at all those outside influences and you basically say most of the stuff that's happened at Bed Bath & Beyond is self-inflicted, or in this particular case, uninflicted, simply because it looks from the outside like they were fairly reluctant to change the business model that had been working for them for 28, 29 years.
Right. And so one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to look at all of their assets. I mean, I don't know if everyone knows, but they also run Buy Buy Baby, Christmas tree shops. They have One King's Lane, Decorist, World Market, Cost Plus, and some others. I mean, what do you think? You guys at AlixPartners, you're sort of turnaround artists. You go into companies and you help them fix and change things. What do you suggest they should do sort of first on the deck?
Yeah, I mean, so there's 2 things that need to happen simultaneously. The first thing that needs to happen is really to get your hands around what's going on in the operations and limit the number of things that you're working on to a very, very few. So 1, 2, 3 at most operational priorities, and we can talk about what those operational priorities are in a second. Going back to the mix of businesses that they own, part of the focus of the business is to think about what those non-core assets are and how you can leverage those non-core assets to either improve the balance sheet or to generate a little bit of flexibility to be able to invest back in the business on the operating side. The interesting thing about Bed Bath & Beyond also is you hear a lot in retail about these struggling retailers. Many of those retailers have had very difficult challenges on their balance sheet by taking on a lot of debt, many through private equity transactions. That is not the case with Bed Bath & Beyond. So for them, it's improving their financial leverage, but it's also improving their operational focus. And then on the operational side, there is an advantage and a disadvantage to being a full-line brick-and-mortar retailer the way that Bed Bath is. And the advantage is that with 1,000 stores around the country, they can create an environment where the customer is at the center of the universe and the store is at the center of the customer. So this notion of customer centricity and thinking about all of the ways a customer may want to interact with your business is really critical in retail today. And so if they create some of that operational flexibility to invest by improving their balance sheet, but also by reducing the number of things that they're focusing on, that could be a win for investors, and it could also be a win operationally. And so, from an outside-in perspective, our prescription for them would be to really ratchet down the number of things that they're focusing on, and then put the customer directly at the center of the universe, but not to forego the fact that their competitive advantage is their 1,000 brick-and-mortar stores scattered around the country. Sometimes we forget when we hear about Amazon, but, there's still plus or minus, depending on whose numbers you look at, $3 trillion of retail sales that happen inside of brick and mortar stores every year in the United States. So it's not as if the store is going away. It's not as if brick and mortar is going away. But the new thinking that has to happen is how the retailer puts the customer at the center of the universe, thinks about all the different ways that a consumer would want to interact with that business, and then leverage the assets that they have instead of trying to play the copycat game and try to copy Amazon or copy somebody else in terms of all the other service offerings.
I hope they're listening to your prescription. We'll see if they can make some improvement and turn this around.